Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the Cultivating a Great Outdoor Recreation Economy web seminar. I'm Lynn Knight, Vice President of Knowledge Management and Development at the International Economic Development Council, and today I'm happy to be the moderator for today's webinar. Joining us today are two experts who will share insight on how your organization can boost and sustain your outdoor recreation economy. Before we begin, I have just a few housekeeping notes. During the webinar, we will have all lines muted. Please type all of your questions into the questions box, and at the end of the speakers, I'll pose the questions to our speakers during the Q&A period. And you're going to have plenty of time for this, so feel free to type your questions as you're listening, and we will have all the questions at the end. And then within 24 hours, you'll receive an email with an electronic evaluation of the webinar. Please do complete it. IEDC staff uses the feedback to plan future sessions. Furthermore, you're going to receive a link to download the presentations at the end of the evaluation. So at this time, I'm very pleased to introduce our first speaker, who is Rebecca Ingham. Rebecca serves as the Executive Director of the Great Falls, Montana Tourism Organization in Great Falls, Montana, Big Sky Country. For 10 years, Rebecca has shared the benefits of starting, growing, and locating businesses in Great Falls. She cares about the quality of life for employees, and so does her community, and the programs they have developed there reflect this. It also reflects the valuable work ethic residents of Great Falls at Great Falls Development Authority. Today, as the Executive Director of Great Falls, Montana Tourism, Rebecca leads the city's efforts to promote Montana's base camp for art and adventure to leisure travelers and meeting planners with an intent focus on growing the local economy. Rebecca, we're really glad to have you today, and without further delay, I'll turn this over to you. And feel free to share a little bit more about yourself than this brief introduction I just gave.
Well, thank you so much, Lynn. I am just delighted to be here sharing the Montana and the Great Falls, Montana story. I have lived in the state of Montana since I was 5, and I got the distinct opportunity of growing up in eastern Montana in a town of 5 people. So from that standpoint, being in Great Falls and talking about outdoor recreation, really in my wheelhouse, because there wasn't a whole bunch of additional opportunity in eastern Montana in a town of 5 that would provide much more entertainment. So I am going to go through quite a few things here today, kind of give you that big, broad spectrum view of Great Falls and outdoor recreation. And let's get it started. So the first thing I like to do when I am talking about Great Falls and Montana is really to set the tone of kind of what we are. And for us in Great Falls and most of Montana, we really offer natural beauty, unparalleled, diverse scenery for the independent outdoor adventurer. That's one of the main reasons people come to the state of Montana is for our outdoor recreation. But Great Falls is kind of a distinct difference between in the state as a whole with its arts, culture, and history in our community. Now, some of the people on our webinar may or may not know where Montana is. I travel extensively visiting with potential leisure travelers in our key target markets, and geography is a little bit tough sometimes for folks. So I have provided kind of that idea of where Montana is in relation to the U.S. And I do this because Montana is the 4th largest state in the U.S. We only have 1 million total people. And so in a general sense, a lot of people know where Great Falls is, but they don't necessarily, or where Montana is, but they don't necessarily know in relation to other locations. So there you can see Great Falls. We're centered in the central part of the state. And if we zoom in a little bit, we really are 3 hours from about anywhere else in the state of Montana. So when people are familiar with Montana, they do know about Billings. They'll know about Bozeman or Big Sky, sometimes Whitefish and Glacier. And so we orient them extensively with kind of what they might know a little bit closer to Great Falls to get them kind of focused in on where it's at. With that, the Montana Office of Tourism and Business Development has done extensive research. They do brand analysis, they do market analysis that we then utilize at a local level to really determine what marketing message works, what doesn't. And so the Montana brand really focuses in on three key pillars. Those three pillars are the fact that Montana has that spectacular, unspoiled nature throughout the state, that we have vibrant and charming small towns. Great Falls is the third largest city in the state of Montana with just under 60,000 people. That's a big city for Montana. It may not be a big city in comparative, but again, unspoiled nature leads to smaller towns. In addition to that, we have breathtaking experiences by day and relaxing hospitality at night. We do hear often in Montana that the people here are just friendly and kind, and we play into that. No training required, that's just the way we are. And we are a simply approachable community or people, but we're not unsophisticated. You'll find that we're confident but not arrogant as a state. We're very genuine but not old-fashioned as part of our brand. And you'll find that it's a very grounded state but not stuck in our ways. We do have a lot of modern amenities. With all of that does come some challenges for us. In a recent 2016 study, we do know that when we talk about Montana to people and the outdoor recreation that exists in our state, there are some massive misperceptions or preconceived notions about the skill set it takes to go to Montana. We've heard comments like, well, it's going to take us probably 3 to 4 months to fully experience Montana, and I just don't have that kind of vacation time. The other portion of that is they think they would have to jump on a horse with a covered wagon to get into the state. There's a lot of this remote feeling, this immediate thought that it's always cold there, and that there's really no place to stay other than a tent where you're going to have to fight off bears to get food, which is truly not the case. However, we did do some adjustments from a state level to really look at the imagery that we were using for a lot of our promotions to make it look more accessible instead of these beautiful shots in the middle of Glacier under those big sky stars in a tent. So we do face some challenges because of the fact that people do think you have to be a little bit more hardy and that the location is not very easy to get to. In Great Falls, we have natural outdoor adventure. So there's not a lot of created experiences or cultivated experiences. We have those natural assets readily available to us, which has been wonderful. We sit right on the Missouri River. The Bob Marshall Wilderness Complex is less than an hour away. The Smith River, which is a pristine state park, perfect for fly fishing and floating, is about 20 minutes to the southeast of us. The Little Belt Mountains are to the east of us. The Sun River flows in from the west of us, right into the Missouri River in town. We have the Big Belt Mountains to the south of us, the Belt Creek to the west of us, the Highwood Mountains to the north of us, and Holter Lake just 45 minutes away. So that provides a lot of different outdoor activities for Great Falls, Montana visitors. The visitors that do come to Montana, as I said, do come for that outdoor experience. And the activities they participate in historically, the top 5 are usually all the same. They're coming for day hike opportunities. Our demographic is a little bit older. They don't want to sleep on the ground in a tent, so they will go out, do the day hikes, come into town after their hike, have a good meal, and rest in a good bed. They'll do a lot of scenic drives. Fourth largest state in the nation, does provide a lot of time on the road, but the diverse landscape really lends the visitor experience to that. Nature photography is a large focus. We are a home to a lot of bird activity. We have a migratory base camp just north of Great Falls for our snow geese. Lewis and Clark sites are a big priority for our state. Even though Lewis and Clark expedition did cover a majority of the U.S., our Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center has the most extensive display in North America of the entire expedition. We also house the Lewis and Clark National Trail Heritage organization here. We are 2.5 hours to the east entrance at Glacier National Park, and we're just about 3.5 hours to the Yellowstone National Park, two of their entrances in the state of Montana. So the national parks do provide the biggest draw for our state. However, the concentration of people in those areas tend to push those Glacier National Park visitors back into the Bob Marshall Wilderness Complex or the Little Belt Mountains for additional experiences that are less crowded. One of the other big things for our area is the visiting of geology and dinosaur-related sites. Our visitors come from into Great Falls predominantly from Alberta. Our driver for our tourism economy is Albertans, followed by Washington, Idaho, North Dakota, California, Colorado. Similar markets for the state of Montana. California, Colorado hit a little higher in the state overall than in Great Falls. But it's a pretty diverse group, and it's usually pretty focused on this area. Now, this is where the largest concentration comes from. We see people from all over the world and pretty much all over the U.S. when we get visitors into Great Falls. It's a huge economic driver for the state of Montana and for Great Falls. Last year alone, we had 12 million visitors in in Montana. They spent about $3.4 billion, generating direct jobs of 38,890. There's a lot of indirect and subsidiary jobs that come from that. And it's not just lodging properties that see that economic impact. The odd thing, the spending data that you see on the graph there is Great Falls, Montana specific. This varies by location in the state of Montana. And the state overall, those top 5 categories include outfitters. I'm going to talk a little bit about outfitters and kind of that guide service a little bit further. And we've got 2 different numbers here for Great Falls. The bottom one is correct, 892,000 visitors, 205 million in spending. I'm not quite sure what that 800,000 was, but I can tell you that in Great Falls, we have about 3,200 direct jobs because of the tourism economy in our location. So as we look at developing that outdoor adventure product, there's not much I have to develop locally from the experience standpoint. It's more about enhancing and providing better availability to that outdoor experience. Since a lot of our state has fabulous public access, we don't have to have a lot of private companies that guide or provide services because of the fact that they own the land. However, this does meet a great demand for retail establishments in our market. So traditionally, what we've seen in the spending data for Great Falls, Montana is that when visitors come here to experience the outdoor wilderness, recreate, whether it be fishing or hiking, whether it be floating or kayaking or hunting, they do buy a lot of their equipment and tools in market when they get here. Because of the cost to either ship or pack when they fly, or if they're new to the area and haven't done certain things, they visit with the expertise and the talent that exists in the market to make sure they're getting the right equipment that they need. We do not have as much concern in Great Falls as we do in the rest of the state for preparing to go into the wilderness or to go in to experience some of these products that we offer, meaning trails and hikes and floating and fishing. However, if people are not familiar with hiking in the mountains or altitude changes or the fact that wild animals are wild, and even though they may be close to you, you shouldn't get out of your vehicle and pet and visit with the buffalo that are there, or pack them up and take the babies to a ranger station, or to destroy the natural occurring beauty that exists within that market. Some people just aren't as aware of those type of unspoken rules when it comes to experiencing the outdoors. So a lot of our local providers, business providers such as retail outdoor stores or outfitters, kind of do some one-on-one training of, you probably should carry some bear spray with you if you're going to go into this market or this area because there's more grizzlies in that area than another. Being surrounded by mountains in Great Falls, you're going to find grizzlies in the Rocky Mountains, but you're not going to find them in the high woods or the little belt. And so depending on what the plan for outdoor adventure is, really does determine what they need to be prepared for, and then determine what those skill sets are. We do have a few outfitters that do take people in for backpack experiences, horseback riding, floating, or fishing. There's a lot of opportunity for guides in that area, but not as much as other areas. As I said, we had about 12 million visitors to the state of Montana, and Great Falls, Montana had about just under 900,000 of them, which means a predominant number of our visitors are going into other areas of the state of Montana. And with that volume of visitation comes additional businesses to support that. So in the Kalispell and Bozeman areas, which are in the western portion of the state of Montana, anchoring the north and the south of our state, you'll find a little bit more concierge level services. People who can book a horseback trip because the private land is there and they've got the business model for that. Great Falls doesn't have the volumes for that, so it doesn't have as much access for that. However, we do have few gaps in our market that we, through Great Falls, Montana Tourism, as well as our economic development partner, Great Falls Development Authority, are working to finance, find entrepreneurs, develop business cases to support. In addition to the outfitters, most of them do need permits. If you're going to be a hunting guide in the state of Montana, you have to have a license to be able to do that. And most of them then lease up any private land that is available and then get additional permits and access rights to the public lands for guiding. So knowing what the land use is extremely important. And for Great Falls and in Montana, with the public access availability, we aren't as worried about that, which also prevents a lot of that kind of gated admission or guided hikes that are necessary. We've got groups that do it, but not in the volumes. And then the other part of that is the seasonality. People who want to do day hikes, they may come back and do winter activities. But again, with that Montana perception of it always being cold here, they assume Montana gets extremely cold in the winter and that just shouldn't be touched past October. And so we look a lot at that seasonality and really looking at the wayfinding to make sure that the access that people can get to is easy for them to do it. One of the big things that we always talk about here is if you're not from here, is it as easy to find the trailhead? Is it as easy to find the road that's going to get you to where you need to be? And so we are currently undergoing some intense wayfinding studies to figure out what signs need to go where based on strategic positioning within the community as well as the surrounding area. So our outdoor adventure product, just a little bit different because of the immense amount of access and different offerings available from our providers of outfitting and guiding services. It's coming. I'm sorry. I've got a little circle here. So, because we have a lot of land mass in the state of Montana, events do equal some good revenue or economic impact for us. But before I dig too deep into this, I really do want to mention that because of the diversity of the state of Montana, it is important, whether it be Montana or any other community, to really look at the brand that they're selling and the assets they have, because not every big scale or exciting or large event is going to fit for the brand in the community. So to give you kind of some perception in the state of Montana, our partners to the northwest do hold Spartan races, the extreme skill set of running and jumping and climbing through mud and crawling under fences. But they're also in the mountains, and they do it right by Flathead Lake. So they're right in the mountains. They have easier access to parking, easier access to get new people into that starting point, and more area for people to be able to sit and watch those Spartan races in the Kalispell market. To the south of us in Butte, they hold Evel Knievel Days, which is a wildly successful 3-day homage to daredevil stunt driver Evel Knievel, who was originally from Butte. The event itself is free. It takes up all of their uptown, and they have an entire schedule for 3 days that showcases the daredevil experiences that you can witness, the different activities at each different station. They do some poker runs. They do some great fun activities related to that. And it works really well in Butte because that's where Evel Knievel is from. The economic impact for Evel Knievel Days, since they're not charging admission, a very large contingency comes into that market, filling all of their lodging properties, all of their campgrounds, all of their available parks with camping for that event. So the economic impact really comes into the food, the merchandise purchase, the dining and drinking experience that happens there during that event. In Great Falls, being the base camp for art and adventure in the state of Montana, we host Western Art Week, which is not nearly an extreme sport event, has nothing to do with the outdoors. But 50 years in the making, we pay homage to Charlie Russell, the famed cowboy artist, with 1 week of art shows, auctions, symposiums, education. It's 17 different shows all running at the same time. It brings in just about 5,000 extra people into our community for those days. And it builds into our brand and the assets that we have here. There are other things that we work on locally that fit into that. However, we don't have any solid data that shows that these events increase the spend. So we know in Great Falls, the average visitor spends $277 per day that they're in our community. We don't have the tangible research that shows that these kind of events bring in more, but we do have the research that shows it's the primary reason people come into the market. So they would have chosen to go other places if these events weren't going on. The events that we are working on here have to do with river activities and our trail system that exists for bicycles. We did do an amateur stand-up paddleboard competition race as part of a convention that we did, and it was very successful. We've got some great opportunities with our river and the history of the Lewis and Clark journey, where portage races from canoes around all 5 of the falls on the water really have done well in the past. So those are, again, great economic impact, but not any higher or lower in general. But the fact that the event happens brings the people in, and we get that impact. So some tips on message and marketing. We've learned this throughout the years. First is to know the market. If you're and we've talked about this extensively locally as well as with our partners within the region. If you're going to sell an experience to the German market, the messaging that you're going to use in the German market is going to be completely different than what we would use in the California market. So we really work on determining what market we're going to talk to, but a lot of the elements stay consistent and the same. We share stories of our community to build that emotional response with people, and content is the primary driver for most of our marketing anymore. Because Montana has some great mystique to it and usually has that bucket list of emotional appeal to people when we visit about Montana, we share those stories in a way that gets them to kind of envision how accessible the communities are, how easy it is to gain access to the outdoor recreation that exists, and what resources are available to make sure that their trip is successful. The other big problem that we address in our marketing messaging is where to start. How do you embrace this outdoor experience if you only have a week or 4 days, which the studies are pretty close or pretty extensive on the type of vacations people take anymore. So we share with them, what's the big first step? What's the second step? What are the trip ideas that we can provide to create that inspiration? And then traditional marketing back in the day had a lot of TV, radio, newspaper, and magazine. And the statistics today, we know that 85% of people are going to believe their friends and families' recommendations and experiences over any marketing. So we use that to our advantage. Glacier Country has worked quite a bit with Warren Miller in the past years for their winter activities. And that influencer or expert within that industry shares their videos, their stories through their channels to generate that experience for them. And when friends and influencers do that, the consumer is a little bit easier to go, oh, well, if Sally Jones down the street was able to go to Montana and do a day hike in the Bob Marshall Wilderness Complex and didn't die and didn't come back maimed, it must be fine and safe and good for everybody. I'm going to visit with her about the experience and what ideas she has for our trip. So those kind of things are more essential to us because 65% of the visitor that comes to Montana has been here before. So basically they're taking the top items and whittling them down. They came and did item 1. They're going to come back and do item 2. And so we keep all of those stories, content, trip ideas available for people to share and download so that it's easier for them to know how to experience the outdoors and what resources are available for them to be able to do that well and safe. We also use images and videos to showcase the area because a lot of the first impressions people get when you start talking about Montana is mountains. And because of our diverse landscapes and unspoiled natural beauty, we like to show a lot of differences between that, but also show that there are vibrant communities people can be a part of that are safe and clean and good to be in after they went out for their outdoor adventure. And then the last kind of tip for message and marketing really comes down to the strategic use of people. Um, we historically in the state of Montana had done a lot of beautiful landscape photography for a lot of our marketing. So when you'd see banner ads or articles or anything that was talking about Montana, you'd see this expansive, beautiful landscape, but there are no people and there are no roads. And that is what led to a lot of that misperception for the Montana brand that you can't really get there because everything you see is in the middle of nowhere. So they must just walk around and engage that way. So we focus on showing people in our markets, and not just people who look like they're experts in hiking, but families with young children, people who aren't full of gear to show that you can do a day hike and it's not going to be 80 pounds of equipment on your back for a week. So using the right mix of people in the images we use so that the videos and the images that are showcasing what you're going to experience here looks approachable from the consumer's psychological approach. Great Falls has some great opportunities to be looking forward to. Our tourism effort is a little bit more in its infancy than the rest of the state of Montana. I came from economic development, so I'm continually focused on that results of what we can do with our outdoor adventures. But that is the message we lead with on a continual basis. But know that people can't always do outdoor adventures all day, every day. So we differentiate ourselves with that art component and are very proud to share that message with many people. So with that, I'll turn it back over to that IEDC team to let Todd talk next.
Rebecca, thank you so much. Again, I'm Lynn Knight, serving as your moderator today. We've already had some questions come in, so I'm saving them till the end after we listen to our next speaker. And I'm so pleased to introduce Todd Christensen. Todd is Executive Director of the Southwest Virginia Cultural Heritage Foundation in Abington, Virginia. Todd has worked in rural community development at the local, state, and regional levels throughout his career. Todd has been instrumental in leading the development of self-help community-installed infrastructure projects and transformative downtown revitalization projects in more than 40 communities. In 2003, he was co-founder of the Crooked Road, Virginia's Heritage Music Trail, which was the first initiative in a 15-year effort to connect communities in the 19 counties and 4 cities of Southwest Virginia to each other and to a regional brand that assists in the creative economy-based economic restructuring. In 2004, Todd led the development of Round the Mountain, which is a regional artisan network which now has craft trails in all 19 counties. And I know that sports and outdoor recreation is a big part of what he's going to talk with you about today. So Todd, very glad to have you with us, and I now turn the web seminar over to you.
Okay, thanks, Lynn. Appreciate everybody for tuning into this, and I'm speaking from Abington, Virginia, and I'm going to talk to you about connecting outdoor recreation to communities and to a greater regional creative economy, economic development strategy, as well as you'll see, after a 15-year effort, we have finally gotten a brand for the region so people know where we're at. This is Southwest Virginia. Probably many of you don't know it exists because most people in Richmond don't know it exists. Abington is 306 miles from Richmond. Most of the region is closer to 6 other state capitals. So we have a hard time developing our image and orientation in Virginia, but at the same time, we're kind of at the heart of Central Appalachia. But when people talk about Central Appalachia, they generally talk about West Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee, so Southwest Virginia is sort of a red-haired stepchild in that arrangement as well. So what we've really been working on is creating an identity, and this is the most beautiful place on earth, and it's just got so many tremendous cultural and recreational assets. So I'm going to talk to you about it. I don't know how many of you have been there, but if you had a map of the United States and it was like in these colorful jigsaw puzzle pieces, the gray piece kind of sitting in there would be Southwest Virginia because lack of identity. So another big problem is when we looked at it, and I worked for years in the state Department of Housing and Community Development. When we looked at the statewide picture, this was the most distressed by far area in the state. As you can tell, there's been a lot of talk recently about coal, and yes, we've lost most of our coal industry, and which was a dominant industry of 7 of our counties. But really, the biggest hit has been in manufacturing. Since the 1990s, we've lost more than 30,000 manufacturing jobs, over half of our manufacturing employment. And you can see that we've also with tobacco and with like a lot of states, we've lost mining. So what do we do about it? Well, looking at the whole state, and I worked in community development statewide, and but we saw that in Southwest Virginia there was a lot of interest to do something different. There was a really a hunger for economic restructuring. So what we did is looked around and to see if we could find somebody who had some good ideas. Well, we're very lucky to find this person. And anytime I give a presentation, I always show Becky Anderson. Becky was the inaugurator and leader for many years of what I consider the best economic development through the arts organization in America, Handmade in America. And she was very, very generous to us. We went down there. She came up and helped us. So I always mention her, and we always pay forward and pay back, thinking of Becky. So what did we have an objective? Yes. I've been working with rural communities in actually 3 states throughout my career, and I've been in literally hundreds of small rural towns. And when you talk to folks, the biggest tragedy that you find when you peel away the onion, is our kids are leaving and they're not coming back. And especially kids that go to college, and they're not coming back, but they're not being replaced by somebody else's kids. And so we decided that our overarching goal and our overarching measurement, if we were going to do serious economic restructuring, was to track that population. Southwest Virginia had half the state average and less than half the national average of college-educated 25 to 35-year-olds. So our objectives were to attract high-tech businesses and entrepreneurs for quality of life. We want 21st century businesses. You have to have those millennials and an educated workforce to get that. So we have to attract those people. We have to make Southwest Virginia a superior place to live, and for all types of people. But also, we wanted tourism. We were way behind our neighboring states as far as developing tourism and using our assets. And in some ways, that was a benefit, because what we didn't do is we did not have developers come in and put a contrived recreational environment in our state. We still have everything we have is real. It's all natural. It's unique, and hasn't been tampered with. And I'm going to talk to you about how we went about that. in 2003, looking at, after talking to Becky Anderson and looking at various examples, so what is our biggest asset and this most unique asset? Well, this is the area of Southwest Virginia, along with parts of North Carolina, Kentucky, and Tennessee, but especially Southwest Virginia is where actually country music started. It came out of the mills. Some of the first recordings were from mill hands that either went to New York or they came down and recorded them. But that music is still there. If you go to a family reunion or even a funeral in Southwest Virginia, there's going to be a jam, and there's going to be music everywhere you go. So we thought, well, also there's some of the most famous music venues. The Carter Family Fold with Floyd Country Store. Galax is the Galax Fillers Convention, ground zero of old time music. So what we did is I ran into a guy named Joe Wilson, who is the head of the National Council of Traditional Arts. He knew everything about the music. I knew all the localities and tourism people. So we all got together. We did not get together in Richmond. We got together way out in the middle of nowhere at the Carter Family Fold, which is also famous because that's where Johnny Cash played his last time on Earth with his wife, June Carter. This is what it takes to start a Crooked Road. And it takes all kinds of collaboration. So in doing this, we just worked and worked and worked. And another thing that came out of this, and people don't believe me when I talk to folks around the country, but the counties and local governments themselves challenge each other to fund this. And since 2003, every year we've gotten voluntary donations from the counties and towns in the region because they're so important. We did this by tying existing major venues together. And as I mentioned, there are some major music venues in our region. We've got the birthplace of country music. We have the Carter Family Fold. We have the Floyd Country Store. We have Galax Fillers Convention. So they didn't need the Crooked Road, but the Crooked Road tied them all together. And we also reached out and got more than 60 affiliated venues. So if you come to Southwest Virginia 5 or 6 times a week, every night there's a place that has music, and you just don't get that everywhere. And does it work? These folks are from Munich. That's the Munich newspaper. I can't read German, but I can read Crooked Road, and they are in Galax, Virginia, where they came to visit the Crooked Road from Munich, Germany. So we've got all kinds of international as well as national tourism. The Crooked Road actually is now the second most identifiable tourism brand in Virginia after Virginia's for Lovers. Our governor, Mark Warner, at that time, 2004, he said, you know what we need a craft network similar to the Crooked Road. So we got a bunch of people together and didn't know how many people we had, how many artisans we had, but just found the right people. And again, with massive amounts of collaboration and use of partnerships, we now have an artisan network of more than 400 artisans and artisan galleries, wineries, and so forth. And we have artisan trails now in every one of our counties. I didn't think we could do it, but it is awesome. We have over 550 gallery studios, agritourism sites, and so forth. And all these trails are branded for the communities and the counties which they're in, and they tie with the overall brand. But what we really thought in the back of our heads is we need to do something about the economic development aspect of our tourism and how we can really engage in something that's going to have a lot of success. Southwest Virginia is, I mentioned, just a beautiful place with tremendous natural assets, but it did not have a self-conscious outdoor recreation idea of itself, even though there's outfitters and there's been a lot of, there are places that had some outdoor recreation, but the region itself had not really even thought in a coherent manner about outdoor recreation as an initiative. And also, there's very little in the way of an outdoor recreation industry in this region. So what we did is similar to the Crooked Road. Said, well, what do we have that's already here that people already know about? And it blows people away. We've got the Blue Ridge Parkway, which is one of the most visited national parks in the United States, North Carolina, and other areas along Northern Virginia get a great deal of economic benefit out of it, but not so much in Southwest Virginia. We've got the Appalachian Trail, the most well-known hiking trail in the world. We've got the New River Valley, which is the second oldest river in the world, and which North Carolina and West Virginia get a large amount of outdoor recreation tourism. We had almost none in our state. We've got the CLINCH River, which is totally had zero economic development. Breaks Interstate Park, one of 2 interstate parks in the nation, with over 250,000 visitors a year, but almost no economic benefit outside its gates. And the Daniel Boone Trail, which everybody knows that, and Virginia, believe it or not, has had very little effort to identify itself with Daniel Boone, even though he spent lots of time here and even was a county surveyor in one of our counties for about 5 years. Very little. So what we did is have some goals about this. We identified those major assets, and then our goal was to brand Southwest Virginia as a national outdoor recreation destination. And second is to develop an outdoor recreation industry in Southwest Virginia. So the biggest way that we saw to go about this was to take these major recreation assets, connect them to each other to create a regional identity that they lend their ambience to each other and to the communities, and then actively connect the communities to these assets by signage, by creating infrastructure, by creating tourism initiatives, connecting those communities to these assets and to each other. And then to assist entrepreneurs and appropriate businesses in securing financing. So this is a big, oops, there we go. Oh, excuse me. Again, what we've learned is we can't do anything if somebody gets out and waves a flag and invites people to a meeting and sits at the front of the room and chairs a meeting. The only way we get everyone to work together is by having a partnership where nobody's taking the lead, where it's an initiative. And through this outdoor recreation initiative and our strategic plan, we have gotten, in my years, over 30 years of working with communities, a community developer, mostly public sector, I've never seen a large partnership and initiative that included nonprofit entities, environmental stewardship entities, working with local government, working with state government, and working with tourism entities, all for the same initiative. And we've managed to get everybody turned on this. And as you can see, we've got state entities, we've got 19 counties, we've got like the Nature Conservancy and all these other nonprofit and environmental stewardship organizations to work together. What we found was that a lot of the stewardship entities are really in a budget crisis, and they need economic development as part of their mission in order to help with their budgeting. And what the local government and economic development people are finding is that we need asset-based economic development. And as we found out from George Santucci, who is the chair of the director of the New River Coalition, he said, well, finally, somebody's doing asset-based economic development, and we're the asset. They're going to start paying attention to us and taking care of our assets, which was the New River. So people are seeing that. And here's an example of one of our entities, the CLINCH rivers and the coal fields. And part of our mission is economic restructuring of the coal areas and these communities, which are facing incredibly difficult times. Not only are they losing jobs, they're losing their tax base. Almost all of them are having to consolidate schools and lay off employees. So we looked at the CLINCH River, which is in the coal area. It's 57 miles long. There's no economic development associated with that river. There was no connection to the communities. So we pulled all the communities together. We pull all these partners together. We have over 60 partners, and there's 7 communities along the way. And we've got water quality committee. We've got a committee to put in river access points up and down the CLINCH River. We have a business development committee. We have a downtown revitalization. All the downtowns are being revitalized as part of this, mostly with CDBG funds. And another thing that came out of this was an entity called Opportunity Southwest Virginia. For years, I've been working with business development groups, especially small business development groups, and they all think everybody should work together, but usually they think that they should be the one in the lead or in the middle. What we've done is, as a group, we've managed to pull together 24 business development programs and agencies that meet every other month. We have shared business development competitions, and we have a matrix that lets a business person know, the person who wants to start a business know where to start, who to go to, who has financing, who has technical assistance, who can help with business plans. And so this is all done together. Does it work? This woman won her first business challenge. She and her husband started outfitting business on the CLINCH River. There was none before them. Their first full year, they had 2,100 rentals. And all the communities are now trying to get outfitters to work with them. How does this all work? The most important person in this process, how did this go? I'm going the wrong direction here. Can you pull me back a few slides, please? I have to go back 3 slides. Well, hello.
Todd, what slides would you like to show? This is Lynn.
Go back about 6 more. For some reason, it just kept flipping through here.
Okay.
Keep going back. And I'll pick up the pace here. Okay, stop.
Okay, you're back.
This is the most important person to all these coalitions. This is our facilitator. His name's Doug Jackson. He's the secret sauce. By having him, we can bring numerous partners together. Nobody's at the top, the head of the table. In fact, it's a round table. And also not creating organizations, we work through initiatives. So by using Doug, we're able to pull people together and have long-range, objective-driven initiatives that get these things done. This is the town of Cleveland. Cleveland is a coal town. It's dying. It had 1,300 people at one point. It's got 164 now. This is the town clerk. She's an ex-professional wrestler. There she is in the car with Steve Lenneman from the Nature Conservancy, and on the left is Wally Smith. He's a biology professor at the University of Virginia at Wise, and we were working with them. It took me a while to understand, but I used to think this was a dying coal town. But then when we got in the CLINCH River Initiative, we realized, oh my God, they have a mile of riverfront. So we got them some grant money to tear down an old elementary school, put in a campsite. There's no campsites within 10 or 12 miles of here, to create a trail along the river, create a trail to the downtown, use CDBG money to do the downtown, to renovate the downtown. And then somebody, because we had the Department of Conservation and Recreation with us, they said, oh, by the way, why don't we connect the waterfall? Nobody knew they had a waterfall. They have an 80-foot tall waterfall here, and it's in the middle of a national heritage area that's not been able to be opened to they opened that up and connected that to the downtown area.
Todd,
So
we
all
can.
this,
Go ahead.
okay. So the music, the craft, the outdoor recreation is are major themes and initiatives that have their own constituencies. But for economic and community development, our main delivery has been through downtown revitalization. These are 25 communities in Southwest Virginia that have undergone a year-long planning process to transform themselves, either from goods and service centers to cultural centers, and now to outdoor recreation gateways. And most of these out in the southwest part have done that, and we're working with power grants to connect all of them to their to their major outdoor recreation assets. And so each of the communities, we take them through a process that's really quickly. First, I call it through the looking glass. They look back, why is there a community here? When were the buildings built? Is this still the situation today? No, it was a railroad town, but a railroad hasn't stopped in 35 years. So maybe we ought to quit having the center of town at the railroad depot. They're still looking at themselves as coal towns. So what we do is have everybody put a display up, make a little museum to their wonderful past, but let's start looking at the future. So we go through a process of community rediscovery, and basically just go out and find all the assets in the community, within about a 10-mile radius, all the recreation assets, music, arts assets, and try to get a game plan that's tied on assets they have instead of recreating the past. And finally, because there's a concern about bringing new people in a lot of rural communities, we say it's okay, as long as you anchor your culture, people that come to live there or visit will want to be part of that culture. They won't want to change it, because this is something that's unusual to people from a suburban environment, is going to a rural community that has a very strong cultural element to it. But it has to have forward-facing economic development strategies. So the key concepts are ad hoc, stakeholder-driven. A strong facilitator is absolutely important. A stone soup approach, where people all put into the soup and everybody eats it, and everybody puts in and everybody takes out. We don't want to work with any entities in our initiatives that aren't putting in something and aren't gaining something. It's no hierarchy, it's objective driven. It's an initiative. We try not to start 501c3s all over the place. That's why we created Friends of Southwest Virginia, which is an umbrella 501c3 to help these initiatives and do the bookkeeping and all the grant writing and so forth for all these initiatives. and we have outcome-driven, accountable committees. You get rid of the committee if it's no longer accountable or has nothing to do. And another thing that I found is everybody wants to kick people off committees if they don't show up. We have a policy of let the lone wolf hunt. We have an attorney that will do all of our property negotiations for our river access points. He'll do the deed recording. Just don't make him come to a meeting. And so we let him be part of everything, but he doesn't have to come to the meetings as long as he puts in. And then you've got to celebrate. So my final example here is an outdoor recreation area. I don't know if anybody's heard of Damascus, Virginia. It's called Trail Town, USA. It's one of the few towns along the Appalachian Trail where the trail actually goes through to the town. As you can see, on trail days, they get around 20,000 people into town, and everything's thriving, and it's high tide and green grass. But the rest of the year, the town looks like this. This is actually the Appalachian Trail going through the town of Damascus. The town of Damascus is also the home base of one of the most successful rail-to-trail programs in the United States. The Virginia Creeper Trail has about 250,000 people a year rent bikes or take their bikes up from Damascus and go to White Top Mountain and bike down for 19 miles. Unfortunately, they park their cars on the east end of town where the outfitters are, and they get in their cars and never come downtown. So how can we make Damascus as a community not starve for 6 months a year and try to get this economic development into their downtown area and improve their brand? Well, one of the things we did is we looked around in the big picture, saw there's an old mill there that somebody created. There's a restaurant and a hotel that had changed hands 5 times over the last 12 years because nobody knew it was there. We have 2 streams coming together. The main street there is the Appalachian Trail, but nobody even knew this river was there. So we were able to get all this property. We've got funding from CDBG and ARC. We're creating a town green and festival park here, bringing this bike trail through the downtown, through it all the way through this area here. So it goes through all the downtown area by this mill, which is going to expand to 42 rooms and add a brew pub in it. And the Appalachian Trail create a spur around here so that people can come into town, go to the visitor center, walk around here, and then buy a t-shirt that says I walked the Appalachian Trail. But the Appalachian Trail itself was really important. And we talked to the folks at Appalachian Trail Conservancy. Their main headquarters is in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. And we said, well, if we build you a center in Damascus, which is Trail Town, USA, will you have a second center? After talking about it for over a year, and we got a power grant to build them a very nice center, they have agreed, and they're going to put, we're ready to go out to bid and put it in this in this used car lot that's in the center of Damascus downtown. This is on the Appalachian Trail. This Trail Town USA has this used car lot in the center of town. This will all be cleared, and there'll be a nice 2,400 square foot trail center for the Appalachian Trail for people that visit the town to actually have a destination associated with it. So this is how downtown revitalization ties together. And what we've done with all these 25 communities, very few of them are a single shot destination themselves, but by all connecting to these major brands, the Crooked Road, to the Appalachian Trail, these outdoor recreation initiatives, they work together to create a regional brand. And since the Crooked Road started in 2004, tourism has gone up more than 50% in the region. So that's very popular. But the biggest thing with local governments is this is what's happened to the meal and lodging tax since all these initiatives started. And this is what really gains their attention, because losing all this industry, they've lost their tax base. And by showing them that they're replacing that tax base with meal and lodging taxes, they've all gotten on board and everybody's bought into the initiative. This is Galax, Virginia, which is the music, kind of the music capital. This is what's happened since the Crooked Road started in that community, and they focus themselves. This is the poorest county. All these communities are off the interstate. This is the poorest county in Virginia. This is what happened when the Ralph Stanley Museum went into that county. Floyd, Virginia, people come from Europe Friday night in Floyd. The whole town is full of music jams, and it's near the Blue Ridge Parkway. Since they developed the creative economy approach, this is what's happened to their tax revenues. And the last thing I want to leave you with is people say, well, we aren't going to replace all these cold jobs with outdoor recreation outfitters and so forth. That's fine, but that's not really what it's all about. What we're trying to do is create a situation where we're bringing in 25 to 35-year-olds, college educated people. Our theory is, and I think it's right, that there are three things that attract these people to a rural region. One is outdoor recreation as a lifestyle. Two, you have to have high-speed internet, fiber optics. And three, breweries. You have to have a place where they can have a lifestyle. They've got to be able to access high-speed internet because none of them have TVs. And three, they have to have these 25-year-olds want a place where they can meet other 25-year-olds in these rural areas. This is what happened. There's a nanotechnology business. They have 75 scientists and engineers. They're out in a very rural county called Giles County. It's about an hour away from Virginia Tech. But here's what the president had to say about being able to recruit these scientists and engineers. That they like the new river. They like to get out on the river. You don't have to be in the middle of near Stanford, MIT. You can do it right here. This county is doing a new river trail where they're going to have 9 river access points all on the new river connected through the county. And they had recently had a large industry come in to scout them out with the locators for this industry. And instead of taking them to the golf course, the county put them on canoes and took them out to an island in the middle of the new river and had a picnic for them. And the guy that was the head of this company said that was the best way to recruit them that they'd ever encountered in any communities that they've been to. So the last thing we did, a culmination of all this, is getting back to that empty place on the map. We've spent the last year we're going to every county, developing a regional brand. Almost everybody in 19 counties will say they live in Southwest Virginia, but there was no Southwest Virginia on any map. The state didn't have any official designation of Southwest Virginia. So we got a brand together. We went out and sold it with every entity and organization and community in Southwest Virginia. And this year we're in the state tourism guide as an official region, and everybody in the region now is using this brand. And so thank you very much.
Wow, thank you very much, Todd and Rebecca. Really great presentations, and the questions have been coming in fast and furiously from a large audience. So I'm going to try to get through as many of these as we have time for. We have about 20 minutes. And so the first question is for both of you. you know, if a community already has the outdoor recreation assets, what are the key infrastructure amenities that a community needs to have in place to be successful in attracting outdoor recreation enthusiasts? For example, do you need staging areas for big races such as Ironman triathlons, mountain bike events, etc.? Can you comment on that? Rebecca, why don't you start?
You bet. You know, I think that all plays into the ease of access and kind of the creating that experience that isn't difficult for them. If there's a way you know, and devoting land mass just to staging areas that are used for one event or multiple events. One of the big things we have in our state is ski joring, which is skiing a racetrack behind a horse, which is very intense for visitors to view, but having that land mass available that you can create those experiences, probably important. I would say more of the fact is wayfinding, the signs, the maps, the knowledge of the local teams that are helping visitors to find those locations so it's easier to get there. If you've got the infrastructure in place already, i.e. land and roads, it's really navigating to those locations that I think is probably the more focused for that infrastructure piece from my standpoint. Todd?
When we started looking at all these major assets and what we had in the region, we said, this is incredible. We have very little business out of these things. And then when we looked closely, we found that there was very little mountain trails, hiking trails that had parking lots, that had restrooms, that had amenities where they had signs so they didn't end up in North Carolina somewhere. And so what we've done is, and we're using a lot of our power money now to build trails, parking areas, restrooms, and wayfaring signage, as well as marketing.
Thank you. Another question. You know, how do you collect the data on the economic impact and on the visitors in rural areas like you're talking about? How do you actually collect the economic data?
We have a economic impact evaluation that we maintain because we don't want to waste our time if nothing's working. We use Virginia Tourism provides us information about taxes, local government taxes. We get off the internet. We've got a policy analyst that updates our. We track new businesses, tax revenues, the increase in young people moving into a community, and all these things then we can show to our local governments.
So in Montana, similar systems, we use a portion of our lodging facility use tax to fund a research center at the University of Montana. And they have 6 hired surveyors that do intercepts in 6 different locations in the state of Montana. And they're paper-based surveys. So if you've ever been to a location anywhere in the U.S. where you're filling up with gas in your vehicle and somebody stops and asks you if you would mind doing a survey, we actually get most of our data for the state of Montana for economic impact from those paper-based surveys. So those intercepts are critical. In addition to that, we subscribe to Smith Travel Research on our local level for room demand and occupancy data, but we have a funding mechanism in the state of Montana, and other states have this as well, as tourism business improvement districts, where we collect $1 per room night, which does indicate to us how much demand we are getting from our visitors. So we meld all of that together with our statewide by county spending data to complete that picture. And it's a lot of different puzzle pieces that generate that overall picture for us, that kind of fit together relatively well. Some years you see some strays, but overall I would say 90% accurate in all pieces together to create that proper picture for us.
Great. One question I'm seeing from a lot of people is whether you'll get a copy of these slides after the presentation, and the answer is yes. For anybody who's on the call or who registered, you're going to receive a survey at the end of the webinar within the next 24 hours or so. And when you answer the survey, you'll get a link right away to this webinar. Another question is, you know, obviously you're both in rural areas. Do you heavily use and promote social media platforms to promote your communities that, you know, the region? Is that an active part of the economic development and tourism promotion strategy?
In Great Falls, it is. Our efforts are very socially driven, not necessarily a specific platform, but we've partnered with with Great Falls Development Authority, our economic development partner, to provide a system where we share content, we share press release, we share images to a select group of influencers and champions that then distribute that through their social channels. We also do paid marketing for specific social channels. So companies like the Matador Network, which is a website-based company that shares stories of great places to experience and visit, that has a strong social component, not just through Facebook, but Instagram and Twitter and YouTube and all the other wonderful things. So when you do paid placement with that, then your content shows up in those locations. And so we make those strategic investments where we see kind of that large following for each social channel we choose. But that is a lot of the older demographic market, older being 55 and older. It seems weird to say it that way, but 55 and older are on Facebook and they're sharing and commenting. Pinterest is another big one for us for the inspiration phase.
But I can't add a lot to that answer. The only thing I could say is our organization, Friends of Southwest Virginia, which is the umbrella creative economy organization for the region, one of our 4 employees is a marketing director who we were able to get from NASCAR, and her main focus is on social media marketing, and we're totally tied in Virginia Tourism and their efforts, and we coordinate with them. But she spends full time marketing Southwest Virginia on social media.
Okay, here's another question. Do either of you have experience recruiting outdoor recreation-based companies to your respective communities by attracting jobs? And if so, where are the key factors to attracting these companies? What are the key factors?
Well, as I mentioned, we have utilized our creative economy ambience and identity to interest people in enjoying the quality of life that we have. And of course, like Montana, it depends on people visiting in the first place and picturing themselves being there. But it has to be done in conjunction with the outlay of fiber optic connection to the communities, because you can get their attention, but if they want to live there but they can't work there, it's not helping you. And if they can work there but they don't want to live there, they're not going to come to a rural area. The whole idea is the creative economy appeals to people who are more highly educated. We're trying to get 21st century businesses. They have to have fiber optics in order to manage those businesses.
So yes, in Great Falls, Montana, I actually have worked extensively to recruit businesses, but it's more of startups, providing case studies on the feasibility of the concept, helping them collect the research, and then helping them secure the financing. In addition to that, most of our recruitment efforts in the Great Falls, Montana industry have been related to the quality of life that exists here. So we are strong egg-based manufacturing type of economy and healthcare. And so we leverage our outdoor recreation for the quality of life to recruit our workforce and to recruit competitive, advantagely placed businesses that want the experiences that exist here from an outdoor recreation standpoint. So it's a little bit of a twofold answer, but our outfitters, our rental companies, those type of businesses that have started here have been entrepreneurs that have seen the opportunity based on our research and the economic impact of what visitors are spending their money on in order to develop those businesses that are assets within our community.
One thing I'd like to add is, and our main goal is utilizing the creative economy, not just to get direct tourism, but to get businesses that locate based on quality of life. You have to have the workforce there. 21st century businesses don't bring their workforce with them, and when we're half the college educated population of other areas, we have to work on that as we're marketing our quality of life and our outdoor recreation. What we have found is the communities that have embraced the creative economy, and there's 5 or 6 that are all in on it. Not only have they increased business formation of both tourism and non-tourism businesses, had tax increases, significant tax increases, but they've also had a correlative increase in that 25 to 35-year-old population. And we can't say it's causal, but it definitely correlates to communities that are all in on all aspects of the creative economy, especially outdoor recreation.
I think Rebecca may have answered this already, but the question has come in a couple times. What have you done to encourage and assist outfitters to start businesses, or has it happened naturally?
It happens naturally, but it is also in Montana. A lot of our outfitters are hunting and fishing based, which is directly related to the availability of permits that you can secure through Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks to be a hunter. There's a permitting system that is very difficult for some out-of-state people to secure, and our outfitters have an association that helps lobby or educate people about, at the state level, about how much they get, how many permits are directly attributed to their efforts. And so we haven't really had to recruit or support it because a lot of times it's identified already because of either the land that the outfitter already has, or the leases they have access to, or the public lands they're close to. So we just support them by sharing that they're available, as well as making sure that they've got price points and ease of entry and that understanding of the visitor experience to make sure that they're successful in it.
We, as I mentioned, we have this organization called Southwest Virginia Opportunity of our business development programs. Every year we have a region-wide business plan competition, and our communities that are, again, all in on this have annual or biannual business plan, or they call them business pop-up competitions, where entrepreneurs are selected or volunteer to go through a like an 8-week business training course to do business planning. Then it's kind of like a Shark Tank kind of thing, where they present their business plans to a panel, and then there's cash prizes. We had one not too long ago. There's 18 businesses. Half of them, I think, were outfitters or that type of business. They have to be creative economy related, and 3 of them had split $20,000 in prizes. And I spoke with a couple that did not get the prize, and they said, well, you know, we got so much benefit of just networking with the other entrepreneurs and going through the training program and getting our business plan together that the prize really wasn't that big of a deal. It was going through the process. So by doing that, though, you do get people starting to think.
Todd, I think we might have lost you for a second. So I'll jump in and use this as an opportunity to ask what is probably all we have time for as the last question. Big picture perspective now. Do either of you have any thoughts about connectivity and partnership across state lines? What would you like to, how would you like to answer that one?
I'll answer quickly as I can, because I've had a lot of experience with this. Particularly the Crooked Road has been very successful and become very well known. And people that haven't been in government don't understand how hard it is to cross a state line. And we have 2 communities in our region that are actually in 2 states. It is the laws, a lot of what we've done in Virginia is so dependent on proactive investments through the state. And if our neighboring state isn't able to put in similar resources and put in a similar effort, it's really hard to cross that state line. Just try to do car insurance across state lines or anything like that. Everything is much more difficult than you think it is.
In Great Falls, we haven't done as much through state lines. We've gotten partners in the southwest corner that have done some very impressive snowmobile trail maps and trail development between Montana and Idaho. And historically, Great Falls has done some really impressive stuff internationally, and I say that with a little bit of hesitation. Alberta being one of the stronger partners for Great Falls, and the proximity we are to Canada. It is an international location, but for us, it's another state. And we've done some very significant, strong partnerships between Calgary, which is 5 hours away, and Great Falls, because they're similar communities, as well as Lethbridge, which is just an hour and a half, 2 hours away from Great Falls.
That's great. I'm so glad you mentioned cross-border as well as crossing over states. That's a really good point. Well, we've just about ended our time today, and I just want to say again on behalf of IEDC and all those on the call today, how much we appreciate these presentations. We really appreciate your practical information as well as your vision on these presentations. I hope all of our listeners will take a minute to complete the evaluation of today's webinar, which you're going to receive in the next 24 hours, and you'll receive a copy of today's presentations at the end of the evaluation. Also, please be sure to visit IEDC's website where you can sign up for upcoming webinars. Next month's topic is going to be on strengthening workforce and economic development partnerships. and we hope you'll consider joining us for that one. So with that, we'll sign off today, and thanks again to our really great speakers and to every one of you who joined in the webinar. And good day and have a great evening.